boys going through puberty, public high schools, and female teachers with two big life lessons. What could possibly go wrong? Well, turns out everything, because our protagonist, who is a teenage boy, always finds himself in situations that you and I can only dream of.
It should have been me, not him!
Trust me, even Batman and the Tibetan monks would fail in these situations if they didn't have the plot armor. I know you gooners had a crush on one of your school teachers, so comment below the name of that teacher and let's start. Here's the name of the manga we are recapping today, so let's go. Makoto Kurabyashi groaned in frustration as he was getting no jobs after graduating from Andrew Tate's Hustler University. His friend asked if he was talking about his part-time housekeeping gig, when Makoto expressed his disappointment about not even getting a single client. His buddy thinks people probably prefer hiring adults over students, which stung our boy more than it should. But then the conversation took a sharp turn when his friend started fantasizing about being taken care of by Hotta Sensei, a name Kurabyashi wasn't familiar with. His friend pointed ahead, saying the teacher he was talking about is right there. A gorgeous teacher named Rumiko walked by them, instantly commanding everyone's attention like a celebrity spawn. Female students swarmed her, complimenting her shoes with the kind of energy usually reserved for K-pop idols. Kurabyashi whispered that she seems very popular, and his friend explained that Hotta Sensei was beautiful, cheerful, and made classes fun. But the real thing that made her popular was her exceptional figure and adult charm. While his friend was explaining why Hotta Sensei was the campus crush, Kurabyashi, being the man of culture he is, was staring at her extra-large-sized milker, mumbling about how big her chest was without thinking. His friend caught him lacking and immediately called him a closet pervert, but Kurabyashi quickly denied the allegations. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupted them and told the boys they were making a lot of noise. Both of them turned to see Hotta Sensei standing right there and started blushing after seeing front-row view of her milk jugs. They folded immediately and bowed so fast they could have snapped their spines. She smiled and said it was fine as long as they understood. Up close, Kurabyashi was completely mesmerized by her beauty. She was even prettier than he thought, which left him stunned for a moment. But then he looked down and noticed something concerning. One of the buttons on her blouse was hanging on for dear life, as if it was Spider-Man from the train scene. He wanted to warn her about it. But how do you tell your teacher that her button's about to fall without her thinking that you were staring at her chest? But due to analysis paralysis, he couldn't say anything and she ended up walking away, waving them goodbye. After she was gone, his friend teased him again, saying he must be into big breasts since he couldn't stop staring at Hotta Sensei. Later that evening, Kurabyashi was at home steaming a shirt when he wondered if he should give up on his part-time housekeeping job altogether, since he wasn't getting any clients. He looked at the clock and realized his older brother was going to be late from work today as well. Makoto wished he wouldn't overwork himself so much, but just then he received a phone call. Thinking it was his brother, he answered casually, but a woman's voice came through instead. She apologized for calling so late and asked if she was speaking to Kurabyashi from the housekeeping service. It was someone from the agency, and she began explaining the reason for her call, and Kurabyashi listened carefully. Finally, he had landed his first client. Soon after, he stood outside a tall apartment building and reached room number 403. He was nervous for his first real job, but determined to crush it no matter what. He had accepted the last-minute request right away and wanted to do his best. He rang the doorbell, but no one answered. He started to worry that he came to the wrong place. He checked his phone to confirm the client's name and address. But then the door suddenly slammed open, smacking him right in the face like a perfect no-scope sniper headshot. Hotta Sensei was startled when she saw Makoto crumpled on the ground. Unaware it was him, she apologized and asked if he was hurt. Makoto told her he was fine, but upon looking up, he saw a woman with loosely buttoned blouse giving him a glimpse of those heavenly jiggly puffs that he wasn't expecting. He jumped back like he'd been electrocuted and blurted out her name. She froze for a moment, but then looked at the he was wearing and asked if he was one of her students. Panicking, Makoto stood up and introduced himself at maximum volume, Makoto Kurabyashi from Major High School. Before he could finish, she grabbed his tie and yanked him inside, slamming the door shut instantly. She then scolded him, calling him an idiot for shouting his name in the hallway like that. She explained that people would misunderstand their situation and think she was inviting a student over for some after-school activities, you know the ones I'm talking about. But then she face-planted herself on the ground, telling Makoto that she is hungover and yelling was making her headache worse. Makoto looked at her closely, confirming it really was Hotta Sensei. But looking at her smudged makeup, messy hair and wrinkled clothes, he couldn't believe how different she looked from her flawless image at school. The mangaka then blesses us with a nice view of Hotta Sensei's bakery buns, when she asks Makoto how much his service costs for one day. When he says 100 yen, she decides to hire him for one day. Makoto's brain can't handle this level of happiness and freezes for a moment. He couldn't believe that he had landed a client and asked Hotta Sensei if she was sure, but knowing the cancellation process is a waste of time and money, she decided it was best to hire him. She warned him that the place was pretty messy, but he confidently said he was used to cleaning up after his brother, so it won't be a problem. But the moment he stepped in her room, Kurabyashi froze completely because it looked like an absolute war zone. Empty bottles scattered like landmines, trash piled in corners, it looked like a typhoon hit a college dorm. Sensei laughed awkwardly, while all Makoto could do was nod slowly, questioning every life decision that led him to this moment. Makoto got back to cleaning while Sensei casually dropped the bombshell that she was going to take a bath. But before going, she told him he could do anything he wanted, but touching her computer was off limits. That last part had the energy of a biblical commandment. Then suddenly, he asked if she could hand over the blouse she's wearing right now. Hotta Sensei froze for a moment and asked if he was one of those weirdos who like to sniff clothes. I am those weirdos, by the way. Makoto's soul left his body after that accusation, and he explained that one of the buttons was coming off, so he thought it would be safer to fix it while cleaning. Hotta Sensei told him she would give it later and entered the bathroom. Left alone, Makoto analyzed her room and pointed out it wasn't just messy, this was a disaster. He got back to work, gathering clothes, tossing trash, and breaking down cardboard like a man fighting for his dignity. While lifting a towel, he noticed it was quite heavy. He turned it around and something unexpected was tucked inside. His face heated up instantly and he hastily wrapped it back up. Before Makoto could recover from this shock, he noticed a bunch of Sensei's undergarments lying around and wondered if all women have their undergarments lying around like this. He rolled them up nicely and finally caught his breath. But just as he started regaining focus, Hotta Sensei came out of the bathroom and said, "Here's the blouse." He turned around and saw her wrapped in a towel, which made me hard and difficult to focus on the plot. But then she casually crawled up next to him and decided to grab on her double D bra from the pile behind Makoto. She pointed out some clothes had already been cleaned and told him that she is leaving the rest to him. While Sensei was taking a shower, our boy was hustling for those 100 yen and folding clothes with 100% diligence. After what felt like hours of scrubbing, Makoto finally stepped back and admired his work. The living room was sparkling, just like my favorite doctor's bald head. Suddenly, Hotta Sensei appeared behind him and asked what was he muttering about. His first instinct? Pure relief that she was finally dressed like a normal human being. Makoto then looks down at her legs and realizes she isn't wearing anything. But Sensei casually lifts her t-shirt and shows him that she was wearing shorts. The shorts were technically there, just doing the bare minimum. Makoto immediately turned away like it was some sort of a jump scare and pretended to clean an invisible spot on the floor. He told himself he had just managed to calm his nerves down, so why was he being tested again? Then her stomach let out a loud growl, admitting she was starving. Lucky for her, Makoto had already prepared a Michelin star dinner, which was looking very oishi. Her eyes lit up like she'd found a treasure when she saw the pickled vegetables. She praised his cooking skills and asked how he knew she liked them, but he reminded her that she'd literally written it on the service request form. As she picked up her chopsticks and took the first bite, Makoto held his breath, nervously waiting for her reaction. The moment the food hit her tongue, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Makoto panicked instantly, wondering if his food tasted that bad. He panicked and reached forward to take the plate away. Before he could, Hotta Sensei grabbed his hand firmly and stopped him. "I used to love my grandmother's pickled vegetables," she said in a soft voice. "I thought I would never be able to enjoy that same taste again," she told Makoto. Realizing she wasn't crying from disappointment, Makoto finally relaxed. Still holding his hand, she asked if his hands were of her grandmother's. Completely thrown off by her comments, Makoto's brain short-circuited and he blurted out his own name in pure confusion. She quickly snapped back to reality and apologized for getting too emotional. After a short pause, Hotta Sensei looked at him and started listing his good qualities one by one. He was hardworking, sincere, thoughtful, and surprisingly skilled in the kitchen. But above all, his vegetable pickles were the best. Pointing her finger towards him, she grabbed his attention and made a decision. With the confidence of a CEO making a business decision, she told him, "I've decided to hire you as my part-time housekeeper." Makoto stared at her, asking if she was being for real, and she nodded without hesitation. However, she had some conditions, but at this point, our boy was ready to even drink her bath water if it meant securing the job. Suddenly, she whipped out a terms and condition paper with 12 clauses, all this while smiling like she'd already hired him. Makoto stared at it in disbelief because this thing looked like a legal contract for mortgage, and hesitated before signing it. After one last look, he finally signed the contract, wondering what kind of literal booby trap he'd just signed himself into. Sensei clapped happily, saying she could now eat his pickled vegetables every day. As he watched her smile so genuinely, he couldn't help but think how cute she was. but then her expression suddenly hardened and leaning forward, she warned him in a low voice that if he ever broke the contract, she'd drag him down with her. Makoto nodded quickly, realizing he'd just signed a deal with the devil in a bathrobe. Then in a teasing tone, Hotta Sensei called his name and told him to keep their relationship a secret. Makoto's brain instantly short-circuited and turned bright red, while stammering the word, Sensei. He tried backing away because she was getting a bit too close, but Hotta leaned in even closer and told him she would keep his promise. Their faces were inches away from each other and then he sat there drenched in sweat and stared at the ceiling, realizing it was all a dream. A wet dream to be specific. Later that morning at school, one of his friends pointed out that he looked awful for a Monday. Makoto said he'd had a weird dream, internally admitting it was actually kind of amazing. It had been 2 days since his first housekeeping job at Hotta Sensei's apartment. So many things have happened since then and he still couldn't fully process whether it was real. But then a terrifying thought hit him: what if the entire visit was part of the dream too? He shook his head immediately, rejecting the idea that it ever happened in the first place. But then someone called Hotta Sensei's name and his heart skipped a beat. Down the hallway, Hotta Sensei walked like a runway model and greeted students with her signature radiant smile. Their eyes met for a split second, but before either of them could speak, Makoto panicked and sprinted in the opposite direction as if his life depended on it. He tried calming himself by remembering her messy and exhausted look at home, but his teenage brain kept replaying the dream version, which made things hard. In his pants, his friend noticed him acting insane and asked if he was alright. Meanwhile, Makoto was wheezing in the hallway like he'd just run a marathon. Deciding survival was the priority, he concluded the only solution was to avoid looking at her at all cost. Or so he thought, because no matter where Makoto went, she was there. Hallways, classes, stairs, it was like she is a recurring NPC. He took a deep breath before going to the class and told himself he needs to hurry before she noticed him. But then someone grabbed his arm and yanked him into an empty room. Makoto nearly passed out on the spot when he saw Hotta Sensei was pinning him against a wall with one of her juicy leg pieces. She demanded an explanation to know why he kept acting so suspicious around her, and honestly, if I was an undercover agent I would have spilled the intel, because how could you resist those thighs, man? She reminded him firmly that they were supposed to keep things professional at school, but if he kept behaving like this, she'd cancel their contract entirely. Flustered, Makoto admitted he was just nervous because she was really pretty and he couldn't help but stare at her. Hotta Sensei paused for a moment but then smiled slightly, saying it's natural for our eyes to be drawn to beautiful things. She told Makoto that she will let it slide this time, but if she caught him lacking next time, he knows what would happen. As she left the room, Makoto stood there afterward, wondering what happened to his life. When he got back to the classroom, his friend greeted him casually, completely unaware of the psychological warfare that I would like to be a part of. Makoto had just survived. He asked what took him so long, but Makoto just laughed, asking if the class hadn't started yet. As if summoned by fate, a teacher walked in and the class started. The classroom was buzzing with chatter while Makoto closed his eyes and promised himself that he'd lock in starting tomorrow. The teacher quieted the class and announced their homeroom teacher had to return to their hometown for a while. Until their original teacher returns, Hotta Sensei will act his as replacement. Makoto's brain short-circuited when they made eye contact, both realizing that things were about to get really complicated. We then see Makoto running through the streets, out of breath. Turns out he is late from his housekeeping job since he had to make some preparations. It had been a week since Hotta Sensei became his homeroom teacher. He still remembered how pale she'd gone when she first spotted him in class, like her soul briefly left her body. But to her credit, she recovered instantly and kept things very professional. Despite his own awkwardness about the whole situation, her strict but kind encouragements helped him focus on the tasks. Makoto arrived at Hotta Sensei's apartment for his second housekeeping session and rang the doorbell. When the door opened, he froze for a moment because she was wearing tight workout clothes. He entered her apartment and asked why she was wearing those clothes. Cheerfully, she told him she'd decided to try yoga for the first time in a while. Makoto asked if she was doing it for flexibility, but Hotta Sensei revealed she had gained a few pounds and wanted to lose them. Telling him not to worry about her, she waved him toward his cleaning duties. While Makoto scrubbed and organized her place, Hotta Sensei struggled through her yoga routine and groaned as well. This pushed our boy's mind into the gutter and he started having unholy thoughts in his head. Thinking if he looked away, Hotta Sensei's presence won't affect him, but her voice alone was enough to completely derail his concentration. Eventually, she collapsed onto the mat and declared herself too stiff for this type of stuff. Thinking she was finally done, Makoto turned around and asked if she was finished. She said no and called him over. Confused, he approached her cautiously, but then she asked him to help push her lower back to deepen her stretch. At this point, I just wish I got reincarnated as Hotta Sensei's tank top. Makoto was going insane after touching her lower back and barely managed to keep himself together in that highly stimulating situation. After a while, he told Hotta Sensei that he'd be going back to his cleaning chores. But there were 30 minutes remaining, and with a cheerful smile, Hotta Sensei asked him to join her yoga session. By the end, Hotta Sensei stretched happily and said she felt refreshed and energized. She thanked Makoto, who was on the ground after the exhausting session. She asked him why he looked so tired, and he sarcastically answered, "I wonder why." But deep down, he silently vowed to never help her with yoga again, ever. As he packed up, she leaned in and said having someone there to assist you increases the improvement rate, asking if he'd help again sometime. Flustered, he immediately said no, but then added that he'd reconsider only if he was allowed to use earplugs and gloves. Later as class ended, the students noticed that Makoto had already vanished because it was a special day for him. We then see our boy standing in front of a door with the keys conveniently left in the lock. Seizing the opportunity, he stepped onto the school rooftop in a typical slice of life anime fashion. The open sky and breeze hit him all at once, filling him with pure joy. But then a sharp voice called him out for trespassing on the roof. Startled, he turned around to apologize and saw Hotta Sensei standing there. Upon seeing Makoto, she switched to her casual tone and asked how he even got up there. He explained someone had left the keys in the door. She paused, realizing it was probably her fault, and awkwardly thanked him when he handed it back to her. She then told him to head back to his class since the rooftop was kind of her secret lunch spot. Makoto hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Can I stay for lunch?" Worried for him, she asked if he was a friendless loner, which he denied immediately. As she began munching on her food, she said, "I have dedicated a day in the week where I read while eating." Normally, Makoto ate his lunch on the stairs like an NPC, but today he wanted to use his manga protagonist privilege and wanted to try the rooftop. He asked what she brought for lunch, so she showed her bento box and she casually mentioned she'd already finished her lunch. Right after saying that, she pulled out a sandwich, a scone, a croissant, and a curry bun, leaving our boy wondering if she is somehow related to Big Smoke. He was baffled by her words a few moments prior and she brushed it off, insisting her lunchbox is too small and getting a bigger one would ruin her image as the perfect teacher. But then her eyes locked onto the delicious-looking food in Makoto's lunchbox. She told him the lunch was looking really good and leaned in way too close, completely invading his personal space while resting her milk jugs against his arm. Makoto's brain short-circuited, so his survival instincts kicked in and he offered her one of his rice balls. He told her that he had an extra one and that it was probably healthier for her, so she gladly accepted it. She takes a bite, and her face lights up like she just tasted a 5-star meal. Hotta Sensei then blurted out that she loved his cooking, and this comment made Makoto's heart skip a beat. As she happily praises the rice ball, he silently wonders how anyone is supposed to handle her when she acts like this on a daily basis. She insists she should pay him back, but he tells her it's fine. But she was persistent, saying she took food from a growing teenager. So Makoto promised he would think about it at his next cleaning job. She commented that he was quite modest for someone his age, pointing out he isn't greedy like other boys. But then a strong gust of wind blew past them, lifting her dress. She panicked and grabbed it down, while covering her face with the other hand. Makoto was flustered after seeing her like this and stared very hard in the opposite direction. Trying to sound composed, he told her she didn't need to repay him anything. She got confused and asked him why, but Makoto told her she had already repaid him. Back at Hotta Sensei's place, she watched intensely as Makoto was cooking. He glanced over and calmly told her she was drooling, making her snap out of the trance-like state she was in a few moments ago. She wiped her mouth and enthusiastically told Makoto she loves to eat crepes. He told her to wait patiently because this might take a while, but she refused, insisting on staying right there to watch his every move. He could feel her intense gaze burning into him, making it nearly impossible to focus. Suddenly, she lit up and decided to help him because if she helped, the food would be prepared quickly. She told him to wait for a moment and disappeared, leaving him confused. After Makoto set the batter aside to rest, Hotta Sensei returned to assist him. She was wearing an apron and for exactly one terrifying second, his brain assumed the worst before realizing her clothes were just hidden underneath. Makoto compliments her and she smiles like she just won a prize. She asks him to pass her the towel and when he does, he accidentally gets a side view of Hotta Sensei's milk jugs. When she asked what he was doing, he dodged the question and told her they're going to start the preparations. He tells her to mix the sugar and milk and they started to work. He casually commented that she must enjoy cooking since she always made her own bento box. But Hotta Sensei flat out admits that she packs whatever she finds in her fridge that day. He then looked at what she was doing with sugar and milk and told her that baking required precise measurements. Changing the topic, she wanted to make whipped cream. Makoto asked if she had a mixer, but turned out she didn't have one. but then she grabbed a whisk and announced she'd do it by hand. Makoto told her it would take a lot of time and decided to look online for a more efficient way, but she just called him boring and told him to stop worrying. At first, she was confident in her abilities, but after a short while, she was sweating buckets and clearly regretted her decision. Seeing her struggle, Makoto asked if she was okay. He tried to offer her help, but she stubbornly refused and insisted she won't be able to call herself a woman if she gave up now. While Hotta Sensei was having her one-on-one battle with the whipped cream, he quickly searched online and found a trick involving ice water. He went to grab a bowl from the shelf, but then Hotta Sensei slipped. Makoto asked if she was hurt, but she just looked at him and softly apologized. Sitting there on the floor, she was covered in whipped cream like my basement floor after I goon to overflow every night. This was too hot to handle for Makoto and he crashed on the floor. Hotta Sensei asked if he was alright, but he told her to just go and clean herself up. Later, they used the ice water trick and whipped the cream effortlessly. Hotta Sensei pointed out that it would have been much simpler if they used this trick from the start, while Makoto mumbled this was the plan all along. At the school library, Makoto and his friends split up to hunt for a specific book for their group project. Once they scattered, he wandered through the aisles, genuinely happy to be there and even considers borrowing something for himself while he was at it. Deciding the science section is his safest bet, he turns around the aisle and immediately freezes like a glitching NPC. Hotta Sensei was right there, standing on a small ladder and stretching to put back a book on the top shelf. He wanted to greet her, but remembering their unspoken pact to never interact at school, he decides to look what her came here for. While passing by her, he sees Hotta Sensei's big bakery buns and yelps. His perfect stealth plan gets ruined and looking down, she spots him standing there. Caught red-handed, he greets her in the most awkward way possible and realizes that his plan to silently navigate past Hotta Sensei has completely failed. She smiles brightly and asks if she can help him with something. After quickly confirming that no one else is around, her cheerful expression drops and she leans closer, reminding him that he should only approach her when he needs something. Panicking, Makoto blurts out the first excuse his brain can find and pointing at the stepladder, he asks if he could borrow it. Her glare softens and she tells him he should have just asked her like a normal human being. She explains she was using the trolley for her class materials and that his timing is perfect because he can help her put the books away. She says it's more satisfying to tidy things up one by one, while Makoto mutters that he's the one who ends up cleaning anyway. She then casually reminds him that he left his sweatshirt at her place, so Makoto decides to pick it up on his workday. Suddenly, he hears some familiar voices nearby talking about him. His friends wonder whether he has a girlfriend because of what they heard. He enters panic mode instantly and starts looking for a hiding spot because if he can't hide, he knows he's getting cooked by his friends. Hotta Sensei grabs him without hesitation and yanks him down to hide. One of his friends peeks around the aisle but finds nothing. As they leave, one of them wonders if he forgot to take his medicine and thinks it's too early for him to have a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Makoto is stuck hiding with Hotta Sensei, practically pressed against her huge milkers. "If you promised to meet your friends, you should have said so," she says while leaning back. But the moment felt way too intimate for our boy and he apologized to her while covering his flushed face. Seeing his reaction, Hotta Sensei got worried and asked if he's crying, but he insisted he's fine and told her to pay him no mind. He then walks back to his friends and upon seeing his flustered face, his friends gets worried about him for all the wrong reasons. At Hotta Sensei's apartment, Makoto planned to make potato salad, only to discover they're out of mayonnaise. Hotta Sensei was lying on the couch, so when heard that he is going to the store to fetch some mayonnaise, she immediately asked him to buy that thing for her. The problem, she can't explain what it is. Every guess Makoto makes is instantly rejected. Eventually, she throws her hands up and demands he just buy the crunchy yellow thing. Then completely out of nowhere, she declares that for today only, he'll be her little brother. She explains that during this shopping trip, he has to call her One-chan, like siblings would. With a mischievous grin, she asks if he understands while calling him by his first name. Makoto's brain overloads from embarrassment and he starts blushing. As they head out together, he starts panicking and wonders what kind of strange roleplay he's just been dragged into. At the supermarket, Hotta Sensei carefully scans the produce section but can't find what she's looking for. Makoto watches her from a distance, impressed by how different she looks in her disguise. Suddenly, she calls his name which startles him. A few nearby shoppers glance over, clearly noticing how beautiful she is. He almost calls her sensei, but she quickly shushes his face and reminds him of the rule. She picks up a yellow bell pepper, then a mango, seriously considering both. Makoto points out that those seem way too fancy for whatever she described. He then spots something and points it out to her. It was a konki squash which is similar to a pumpkin. She immediately shakes her head, saying she ate it raw and pumpkins can't be eaten like that. Makoto suggests asking a store clerk, but she refuses, saying it would be embarrassing to ask such a vague question. Unfortunately for her, a clerk overheard everything and walked over to them, confirming that they're looking for a konki squash. Hotta Sensei looked extremely pleased and thanked the clerk cheerfully and laughed, saying she just wanted her little brother to practice talking to people. But then it starts raining outside and on their way home, they ended up soaked. Hotta Sensei complains about her soggy shoes while Makoto remembers the weather report he heard before going to the shopping trip. Once they reached the apartment, Hotta Sensei immediately started taking off her soaked clothes, while our boy just stood there enjoying the view in front of him. She then looked at him and revealed that she had fun pretending to be siblings. Makoto feels a strange guilt hearing this, because he was too busy staring at her milk jugs. After finishing her meal, Hotta Sensei thanked Makoto with a cheerful smile and asked him what's for dessert. He mentioned it was pudding and she squeals like someone just announced a national holiday. While he was making dessert, she decides to kill her time by watching a movie. She flips through channels and settles on channel 9. The TV flickered to life, showing a deep dark jungle as a ghostly figure was walking with hair covering her face like a shampoo commercial gone wrong. Hotta Sensei wondered if it was the famous movie Ring, to which Makoto confirms and proceeds to spoil the entire movie for her. His face lights up and he asks if she likes horror movies as well, to which she gives a vague reply. He enthusiastically recommends it, explaining that since the footage quality is old and blurry, it actually makes it even more scary. He heads to the sink to wash the dishes, but she suddenly grabs his apron from behind and asks if he isn't going to watch the movie with her. Clearly she is scared and wants to watch this movie with Makoto, and threatens to cancel his contract if he doesn't comply. Makoto sighs and sits beside her, mentally noting that this definitely still counts as work hours. As the movie progresses, Hotta Sensei curls up on the couch, knees tucked in tight. Makoto assumes she is enjoying the movie, but clearly she just wants to fold into a burrito and vanish from reality. He asks if she is cold and offers to make her a hot drink, but she refuses instantly. Hotta Sensei then asks Makoto if he needs to use the bathroom, and he says I'm good, but then becomes a tsundere and somehow spins it into him needing to go, and generously offers to accompany him. He then stands outside the bathroom like a babysitter and she asks Makoto if he is standing there. As soon as they're back on the couch, Hotta Sensei hides her face behind her hands. Meanwhile Makoto just sits there with only one thought on his mind: why are they sitting so close? He calls out her name and it easily scares her. Do you have a hard time with horror movies? He asked her. She puffs herself up with fake confidence and denies it instantly, while sweat pours down her cheeks. She loudly declares that ghosts aren't real and movies are just stories. Right then, a creepy ghost appears on the TV and starts crawling towards the screen. Hotta Sensei panics and lunging towards Makoto while giving us a view of her bakery buns. Makoto's brain stops working and he tells Hotta Sensei to stop clinging because his shield her might rise up, but she refuses to let go. Later, while eating the dessert, Makoto complains that she should have warned him that horror movies wasn't her thing, but she explains that she likes scary stories in books because books don't have scary sound effects. He points out she could have just stopped watching, but she mutters that he seemed completely fine the whole time, so she didn't want to embarrass herself. Feeling embarrassed, she apologizes for showing such a pathetic side of herself. But Makoto shrugs and casually says her vulnerable side is actually pretty cute. Embarrassed, she blushed furiously and immediately double smacks his face so he can't see it.